Welcome to Season 2 of the Generational Dental Wealth Show. Season 2 is all about increasing dental financial IQ. We do record these live in studio at Team Studios, so if you want to see the video format of this show, go ahead to Spotify or YouTube. Let's hop into it.
Before we hop into today's episode, we wanted to share that this is not legal or financial advice. The thoughts that we share here are our own, and these are for educational purposes only. Kingsley is my CPA. He gives me financial advice. Please seek or solicit the help of your team and your financial advisors for your financial future.
Hello. Welcome back to the Generational Dental Wealth Show. My name is Dr. Jermaine Affetti.
My name is Kingsley Affetti, CPA.
Man, we are coming to you today with a fun episode, part 2 of why doctors are not millionaires.
Yeah, man.
So last time we had a great time. We touched on 5 main topics that affect doctors equally. And we trying to figure out how we can use these areas to help build generational dental wealth.
Yeah, man. Before we hop into it, man, what's kind of going on this week? I heard you got a little bit of travel in your itinerary. What's going on?
Man, so before we can even travel, man, we got 3 days at the office. You know, we do 12-hour shifts. We're hiring, training, doing all that. But once we get to Wednesday night and we finally leave the office around 8, we can finally start switching gears to Las Vegas, man. We're going to Vegas. It's going to be a fun time. The Generational Dental Wealth crew is packing up and going to Vegas. And yours truly, the people's champ, the QB of taxes, the tax strategist himself, is going to be giving a keynote speech to the National Dental Association, man. So I'm excited. I'm excited for your talk, man.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I've never been to Vegas, man. So I hear all the good things you keep saying. You keep talking about the mountains and hiking and different shows out there. So I think it's going to be a fun time.
Man, there's only 2 places that dentists meet, and that's Vegas and that's Phoenix. I don't know why, but those 2 places, dentists always find themselves. So I go to Vegas pretty often, and I go to Phoenix pretty often just because that's where a lot of continuing education is. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to go out there. We're going to go out there with the ladies. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to be able to hit the mountains. We're going to be able to see colleagues. And again, I'm just so excited for your keynote speech, man. Quiet kept. We won the 40 under 40 award, man. So that was a fun honor to get, man. So shout out to everybody there. Shout out to my nominator, Dr. Octavia Miller. So we won the 40 under 40 award for the top 40 dentists in the nation, man. So that was a good time there, man. To be on with a group of so many amazing other dentists, it's an honor to be in the presence of greatness, man.
Yeah. I'm excited to meet a lot of people I follow online and keep up with, and vice versa, man. I met many of them throughout the time, man. But hopefully get to meet a lot more people this weekend.
For sure.
I'm excited,
man. Oh man. So last time we discussed why are doctors not millionaires, man. If we're going to give a quick recap, the 5 top reasons were student debt. They were management skills, they were investment decisions, work-life balance, and taxes. So our goal today is to go back, and we're going to basically unwind some of these reasons. I want you to give a way that they can use this as an advantage. I'm going to give a way they can use these downfalls as an advantage. So instead of for reasons why we're not millionaires, how do we use these reasons to become millionaires?
Yeah, man. And quick recap, right? We talked about what net worth was. I think a lot of people.
Can you give another recap? Just briefly, what exactly is a net worth millionaire? What is that?
Yeah, so net worth, right? There's 3 different aspects, right? There's assets, there's liabilities, and then there's net worth, right? Your assets is everything you owe. Assets, everything that you own, right? So your cash in your bank account, different stocks, maybe you have equity in a business or whatever like that, right? It's whatever you own. Liabilities is whatever you owe, right? We talked about practice debt, right? Maybe you have a dental practice, you have outstanding loan, maybe you have student debt, right? Anything that you owe and whatever's left over or the difference we call net worth. And that's simply right. If that number is positive, you have positive net worth. If it's negative, sometimes you can have negative net worth. So it just kind of shows you where you kind of at as far as that.
For sure. And for the listeners out there, usually for most dentists, right, or most doctors just in general, the number 1 and number 2 assets that tend to create the most value in your portfolio are going to be practice for practice owners and your home, your primary residence. Those are the two main assets that generally make up a majority of people's net worth. Now, when we talk about liabilities, the top two areas of liabilities tend to be your student debt, as well as what's owed on your different assets, whether that's what's owed left on your practice, what's owed on your home, owed on your car, different things like that. So when we look at student debt and we look at, as far as like what's owed on assets, those are the two top reasons or top two expenses when it comes to the liability category. So now let's go back even a step further and try to figure out, of these 5 things we talked about last time, how can we use these as assets to help create and generate generational dental wealth?
Yeah, man.
So we start with the first one, student debt. That was, man, we went pretty good into it. And when we think about student debt, I've always had a very steadfast rule that if you want to mitigate student debt, and that's why I like to start from the actual beginning. All right, if you already have student debt, it's really hard to do much about it now. But there are definitely things we can do. But I like to start with, how do we even mitigate how much student debt we take on, right? If you're already a doctor and you listen to this, it's already happened, and that's okay. But you can take this information and give it to your mentees, right? You can give it to your kids. You can give it to your loved ones. The best thing you could possibly do is, number 1, stay in state, and number 2, stay public.
Okay.
All right. It sounds weird, but staying in state can save you upwards of $100,000, and staying public can save you another $100,000. So that small decision can be a $200,000 swing by staying in state and staying public. And because, again, if you stay public, then that means that the state that you're in is, and you are from that state, then they will technically pay a portion of your student debt, right? Now, if you stay public, then that's basically the same thing, right? You're going to get basically a 2 for 1. So that's why I like to look at it like that. But on the same token though, right? Like, if you have already accrued the student debt, right? And you don't have the luxury of being able to stay public, and you don't have the luxury of staying in state. Now we got to start looking at ways, how do we mitigate the student debt burden that we currently have right now? So after we're talking about student debt, now we're looking at staying in state and we're staying public, right? Those are the things you can do on the front end to mitigate student debt. But on the back end, if the student debt is already accrued, now we need to handle the situation that's in front of us, right? So Kingsley, can you give us some strategies how to tackle student debt if we have it?
Yeah, so I mean, for the most part, right, in the area of student debt is very tricky, obviously, because at the same time, right, it's all about priorities. And it's all about a time continuation of everything we're talking about. So in my list, right, if I have excess cash flow, it may not be the number one thing that I'm trying to attack, right? Maybe there are some outstanding, retirement accounts I can fund that can help me holistically. Maybe there's, maybe putting it back into the practice, right? A cash injection in the practice, right? And there's many other things that can be done with cash, but let's say all of those options have been explored. You've taken care of those most, prioritizing things. If there is excess cash or some excess that you have left over, go ahead and try to attack that principal, right? Because the quicker we can get that principal down, the less interest that is calculated on that principal every month. Therefore, the less quote unquote expense that you're kicking out over time, and how long you have to pay that kind of dramatically decreases, right? If that's projected to be 20 years of you paying it off, might be able to get it done in 10 or 15. So it can save you a lot, right? And that's after we've created and we put away everything that we need to put away. If there's still some left over, then it may be a good option to go ahead and try to attack that principal on the student debt.
So what you're saying basically is, though, after we've responsibly handled all of our responsibilities, right, which are making sure that you reinvest it back into either your practice or your skill set, right? Continuing education, whatever it is along those lines. You're taking care of, making sure your housing, everything is taken care of. Your budget is being maintained well, right? And you're saying after you have taken care of what you need to take care of, if there are some excess dollars, then we need to seriously consider using those excess dollars to attack the student debt, but do it in a responsible manner, right?
Exactly.
Okay, then I'll take it even a step further then. There will be a difference in the way that an associate attacks student debt compared to a practice owner. Being a practice owner, I still remember when we were going through the application process, I remember talking to the lenders and they said, listen, you're better off having $50,000 cash in your bank account than you are paying that $50,000 towards your student debt because we need you to have liquidity. And we've talked about in previous episodes what liquidity is, but basically being able to have cash or cash equivalents easily accessible within a 24-hour period or about around that, right? So when it comes to that, we have to keep in mind, number one, you have to have a strategy in which you're going to attack your student debt. If you know you're going to be an associate, all right, and you know that's where your skill set is best suited, then you could be a little bit more aggressive in the way that you attack your student debt, right? If you know you want to be a practice owner, then you probably want to push that can down the road a little bit because you don't want to sacrifice your liquidity today for student debt relief today.
Yeah.
You're better off paying the minimums that are necessary and accruing and having a body of cash somewhere so you can now move into that actual purchase buying process. Now, you don't have to actually use the cash to buy the practice, but they need you to have some type of liquidity, right? Yeah. And even as an associate, you don't want to be moving into paying down debt aggressively if you haven't funded your emergency fund, right? Your safety fund, you don't have your cash fund. Like there are different things you need to get in place. And once those funds are funded, right? Yep. Because realize you're not funding your emergency fund, right? Or you're not funding your cash fund every single month. You're filling up that container, and once it's filled, now you can move on to the next thing. Right?
Exactly.
So when it comes to student debt, there are some ways you can get on top of it. Awesome. Now, if we move into number 2, common reasons why people doctors do not reach that millionaire status, it is management skills.
Management skills, and this is probably the one that I see pretty often, meeting with especially dental practice owners on a month-to-month basis, going through their profit and loss. What do they collect? First of all, what do they produce? What do they collect? What do they spend, and what's left over? We do have ratios as CPAs that we like to see. Okay, we like to see labs and supplies within this certain ratio, 5 to 8% or whatever that is. We like to see facility costs in a certain ratio, right? So facility costs could be taking a look at what is the monthly rent, or what is the monthly bill that is due on that location, et cetera, et cetera. We'll have these different ratios and different KPIs and metrics to help track how are you managing the money that is coming into your practice if you have a practice owner. Same thing can be said, obviously, if you're an associate and you might have a financial advisor that goes into your budget. In general, right, you that financial professional to see, okay, you're doing the day-to-day management of your practice, but how are we bidding when we're looking back every month, right? And like I said, we give you that monthly financial report for us to look back and kind of have some conversations over. So in general, my biggest takeaway with management skills, you can only grow what you can track, or you can only improve what you can track. If you're not tracking what is going on, at least on a monthly basis, how can you effectively correct yourself in your management type? For just quick instance, I have a client, they do about 52% of staff cost. We like to see staff costs closer to about 30-ish.
Did you say 52% staff cost?
52%. That means if they're collecting $100,000 that month, $50,000 is what they're paying in staff costs. And that is extremely high.
Is that including the doctor?
No, it's not including doctor typically. Man. So in general, right, that's probably about closer to 55 to 60% of all the money they're collecting every month is going out the door for staff. And that's before we're talking about labs, supplies, marketing, et cetera.
Mortgage, all that.
So like I said, a proper accountant CPA would be able to sit down with you and say, how are you managing what the dollars that are coming in? Because that's going to affect what you're taking home every day.
That's a really good point. You nailed it. Only thing I would add to that, as far as doctors, one thing that we like to do is do continual education when it comes to the craftsmanship of what we do, right? Yeah. One thing I would implore, and one thing that personally I've enjoyed doing, is taking continual education on management skills. Yeah. Right. Like we can learn how to place implants, how to do advanced procedures. But one of the things that yields the greatest dollar for dollar return is going to management related continual education, learning how to read profit loss statements, learning how to motivate your team, learning how to communicate with patients and be able to close cases. Right. Be able to learn those soft skills is one of the quickest ways to raise your overall net worth, because you're able to connect with people on a higher and a deeper level. Yeah. So if I would employ anything, please take a look into management type continual education programs. You can reach out to us and we can send you some suggestions on some of the people that we personally work with. Now, third common reason why people do not reach that millionaire status, or why it takes a little bit longer for them to hit that status, is investment decisions, man.
Yeah. So around investment decisions, and there's probably a million different angles. I'll kind of give my biggest one. When it comes to investment decisions, obviously there's a lot of different vehicles, right? There's obviously real estate. There's actually obviously paper assets, right? That's stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, et cetera. You get into owning different businesses and equity positions, not even just in dental practice. I know dentists that have equity positions in other type of businesses, right? Maybe they invested some money. In general, my biggest kind of feedback and what I've seen our more wealthier clients do is the way they invest. Yeah. So no matter what they invest in is, right, how long are you invested in that asset? Okay. And what I mean by that, here in the U.S., we have a provision in the tax code that separates short-term investments and long-term investments. Short-term investments meaning less than 365. It's 365 days or less. Long-term investments means over 365 days. Okay. Right? Over a year. And the designation comes in because, right, government wants people to be invested in the long run, helps the economy stay stable over time. I mean, we can go on days and days. But my biggest point here is when you're invested in any asset, right, whether that's a business, whether that's stocks, whether that's real estate, if you invest long term, you now fall into something we call capital gain tax rates. And what that means is the IRS says we're going to give you an advantage or we're going to tax you at a much lower rate because you're invested for the long term. So my simple, I guess, fix is it doesn't matter, at least in my opinion, necessarily at this point, what you're invested in, but just have that long-term mentality so that when you do take that money out and you're about to cash out on your investment, you fall into the capital gains long-term rates versus the short-term versus the short-term ordinary rates that are much, much higher.
Okay. So that makes perfect sense. So you're saying basically like when people are choosing their investments, right, they need to be thinking to themselves, if I'm going to choose this, I need to stay into it at least a year, right? Yeah. Now, obviously, talk to your advisors to make sure that fits your strategy, but at least a year so we can get those tax preferred rates.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, that's the difference, right? Capital gain rate, the highest is 20%. Most dentists are probably falling into 15% capital gains rate, right? So that's 15% versus if it was short term, you would be taxed at your ordinary rate, which is up to 37%. And that's just federal. If I always say California, if you're in a state like California, plus an additional 12%, that's nearly half it's literally half going out the door to taxes. That's almost 50% versus a preferred beneficial rate of 15%.
So basically, right, I want to put this into English, right? So we're saying basically, let's use a stock example, right? So if somebody buys, let's say, Microsoft stock, right? And they hold that stock for less than a year, then that means if they sell it and they make a profit, then they are taxed at a rate that is equivalent to their income, right? Their income tax, their ordinary tax rate, right? So that's going to be higher naturally. Now, because it's just factored into your take-home income. Exactly. Right? Now, if they hold that asset, right, they hold that Microsoft stock for over a year and they sell it for a gain, then that means the taxes that they're going to be taxed on are going to be at half, basically, right? Yeah. Again, the numbers can vary, but basically it's going to be taxed a lot less because it has a preferred tax rate due to it being now considered a long-term asset.
Exactly.
Right? So for me personally, when I think about investments, I mean, I definitely take those kind of things into consideration. But also, when I think about the investment strategies, I think about things that I know, right? Yeah. Things that I like. I implore everybody, one of the biggest reasons why investments don't work for people is because they tend to get into investments that they don't understand, right? Yep. If you don't understand stocks, you shouldn't be in stocks. If you don't understand real estate, you shouldn't be in real estate. If you don't understand insurances, you shouldn't be in insurances. If you don't understand businesses, you shouldn't be in business, right? Now, just because you don't understand it or you don't know it doesn't mean you can't learn, right? Because everybody who knows did not know at one point. Right? I didn't always know about stocks. I didn't always know about business. So when it comes to your investment strategy, I suggest you start with the things that you already know. Don't chase things you don't understand, and work with professionals to learn the things that you're interested in learning more about. Yeah. Because from there, it's easy to stay into an investment for a year plus if you understand the investment versus I heard a hot stock tip from somebody. I'm going to get into this thing and start losing money. I want to sell it tomorrow. And so we got to think about it along those lines. When it comes to investments, find things that you're knowledgeable about and things that you're interested about. Learn more about it before you just hop into it, because all it takes is one or two bad decisions to wreck your entire portfolio.
Yeah, that's true.
And the fourth reason why people don't hit that $1 million number, or it takes them a little bit longer than they originally expected, is work-life balance. So Kingsley, what does work-life balance mean to you?
Yeah, man, work-life balance, man. I'll be honest. What I see across, especially our most wealthy clients in general, is the fact that they choose to practice how they want to practice. And by that meaning, they choose the environment, the days of the week. I just talked to a client a few weeks ago. He said during the summer they take a few weeks off, and at the end of the year they take a few weeks off because they're not like insurance dependent, right? So at the end of the year they're not worried about, oh man, are we gonna, can we get everybody in before insurance kind of times off there? But in general, right, I think it's all about that longevity play, right? You can do a year or two, burn yourself out. You'll be running on fumes. You might really hate practicing, but it's not the fact that it's the practicing, and maybe it's the way that you're practicing, the balance that you have behind it. So in general, my biggest feedback is work the way you want to work, right? Set your own rules. Like you go through this process and you put so many years into this thing, you don't have to be a slave to what somebody sets for your standard, right? If you value family time, or if you value maybe fun activities, or if you value X, Y, and Z, if you value travel, then consider those things. You don't need to work 7 days a week. You don't need to work 6 days a week, right? Value those things and put those things in the right priority for you so that you don't burn out very early in this thing and end up not really hitting your mark and really, really short serving yourself. What about yourself, man?
No, that's good. I mean, to me personally, I think the most lucrative aspect of your job is your availability. For you to be available mentally, physically, spiritually, like available to pour into your patients, to pour into your team. And the only way to really do that is to put yourself in a position where you have some type of balance in your life, where you're able to now eat healthy, where you're able to work out a little bit, make sure you're staying in a good space, to make sure mentally you're in a good space, right? To make sure you're plugged in with your creator, to make sure that you're able to now take care of yourself financially. So when I think about that, and that's probably one of the most fun parts of my job that I've had since I first graduated. When I first graduated, I became a travel dentist, because when I looked at the 8 to 5, the 9 to 5 jobs, I mean, it didn't really align with me. I've never worked 8 or 9 to 5 when it came to being a dentist, right? I thought to myself, how do I choose something that I know I can do and sustain for a long time? So for myself personally, just traveling to different offices gave me the freedom to be able to create the schedule that I wanted, right? So now I can spend more time with my wife if I wanted to. If I wanted to travel, we could travel. If I wanted to work out, I can work out. So for everybody here, realize you have that same power. You can determine when and how you work. Now, the question is, where you work now, right? Your employer, are they going to be okay with that? Or you as an employer, will your team be okay with that? That's a different conversation. But understand, we all have the power to be able to determine when and how we practice. So for us at our office, we work 2.5 days a week, and I love it, right? When we're there, we hustle, we get after it. And then when we're not, we could relax a lot more. It's good to have that kind of work-life balance. So then again, like, even when I was a 1099, I still had that kinds of freedom that, you know what, maybe I want to travel. Maybe I want to be on the shore. Maybe I'll accept an assignment for a month that's on the beach. So now I can relax a little bit more. So when I'm off, we can have different ways to unwind. So when it comes to that work-life balance, I implore everybody here, you have that power. Choose how you want to exercise it. If it's 2.5 days a week, if it's 1 day a week, if it's all 5 days a week because you're hustling with a purpose, whatever it is like that, make sure that your work schedule fits you, right? And you don't necessarily just have to fit into a work schedule.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good.
Last and not least, man, one of the biggest things that derails people's plan to become a millionaire or get there sooner is their tax strategy. Yeah. So as our in-house tax strategist, can you break down how somebody's tax strategy can derail their financial goals?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it's probably a lack thereof any tax strategy. It's probably the biggest thing I see. And we can probably go on for days. I've seen clients where, the thing about taxes, right, we're talking about after the fact. So if you're spending money if you're spending money ahead of time that you should be saving for taxes, then you go into tax debt, right? And next thing you know, that's interest, penalties. You're pushing yourself back and back and back and back. And next thing you know, you're just trying to catch up to zero and just clear debt. So I've seen a lot of unique situations. In general, my biggest thing about, right, why many doctors may not get to that millionaire mark is because they don't have a tax strategy. They say, you know what, I'm just going to concern myself, whatever I take home pay. But that's not you maximizing your position. Yeah. That might take you 5 more years to reach that millionaire mark versus you saying, you know what, I'm going to sit down, and this is my practical takeaway. I'm going to sit down with my CPA 3-4 times a year and say, you know what is my tax situation and what can we do to mitigate that? You know, there's a huge difference between somebody who just files your taxes, a tax preparer, and a tax strategist that mitigates your taxes. And I'd love to really hop into, you know, different strategies to mitigate that, but they're available. You know, over 90% of the tax code was created to save you money in taxes. And it's just incentives and disincentives to just pretty much get you to do what the government wants you to do. And that's how you lower your tax bill. So long story short, I'm not going to hop into any one strategy in depth, but in general, the reason I see this as a big issue is because there's no strategy at all. And people are just playing, I'll figure it out when I need to figure it out type of game.
That's a dangerous game, man, because one question that I always like that you ask is, what is our number one expense? If we all think about it here, everybody listening, think to yourself, what do you think your biggest expense in your life is? For most people, they might think it's their children. Some people, they might think it's their home or their cars or their practice or whatever it is along those lines, right? Yeah. But most people don't know the biggest expense you will incur in your entire life is taxes.
Yeah.
Because everything you do requires taxes. The money you make requires taxes. The property you own requires taxes. The kids that you have are going to require taxes. The cars that you have are going to require taxes and registration. Everything we do, the milk you buy at the store is going to require taxes. Everything we do requires taxes. And there was a statistic that said that basically we're going to spend about 30 to 40% of what we make over the span of our lifetimes just on taxes.
Yeah.
Meaning that if you go to work 5 days out of the week, 2 of those days of that income that we're going to make is just going to go towards taxes. So you got to think about it like that. Like when you go to work, the first 2 days that you go to work out of that 5-day week are literally for Uncle Sam. And the other 3 days are for you. So that's why I think about it like it's important for us to figure out how do we mitigate our taxes in a way that, number one, is legal, and number two, that's sustainable, because we need to put ourselves in a position where our lives feed into our lifestyle, right? Our lives feed into our tax strategy. Our lives has to fit into everything we do, because when you have synergy between your business and synergy between that work-life balance, now you can use, again, you can take your team out for meals. You can find ways to de-stress at work. Now you're making your work-life balance better, right? Now you're able to travel on trips to Vegas. And now you get to meet your colleagues. You get to learn continual education. You get to learn management skills at this particular fair. You might learn how to reduce your student debt. Everything has to feed into one another. But I think once we start realizing that our biggest life expense is taxes, now we can find ways to mitigate it. So, man, this is a fun talk. Kingsley, I appreciate you hopping on this today, man. This was a good one. I'm excited for Vegas, for everybody's going to be out there. If you hear this in time, by the time this is going out a week before we go to Vegas. So link in with us. Come see us, man. We're going to be all over the place. It's going to be a fun weekend. Any closing words, Kingsley?
Nah, man, just come holler at us. We love to talk to you, love to catch up with you, man. And I'm excited.
For sure. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.